Hi guys, good evening. I am Ilangovan, onlineaxi.com, teaching personal for zoology. So last class we started about the coordinating systems. Just we talked about what is coordination, what are the two kinds of coordination, what we have in animals as well as in humans. And under that one I started the nervous coordination brought about by the nervous system composed of the nerves and also the various nerve cells, the brain, spinal cord, etc. And before entering into the brain, the structure, the various components of the nervous system in humans, we have to know how far the impulse is being conducted, how far the impulse is being generated in the case of nervous system. So of the two coordinating systems I mentioned, in the case of nervous coordination, there is a point-to-point connection so that the impulse is being conducted effectively from one organ to another or from the brain to the organ concerned very quickly and effectively. So there is a quick coordination brought about by the nervous system, unlike the chemical coordination where the chemicals, namely the hormones, are released into the bloodstream and are being transported to different parts of the body. So it will take some time to carry out the action. So the action cannot be carried out quickly. Now, what is the mechanism lying in the generation of electrical impulses? So, the unit of nervous system is nothing but the nerve cells or the neurons, what is seen already just under the tissues. Under the tissues, the chapter we have seen the nerve cells, the components of the nerve cell. Recall that one. So, a nerve cell is actually formed of, we know that one, a cell body as cytosol, and on the surface of which, or just from the surface of that cytosol, we have a number of branches. We have a number of branches, branched structures. And there is one long branch which is unbranched, and that is what is known as axon. Recall this one, I will show the picture later once again. Now, this is a cell body, and then this is what is called as a dendrite, the branches. I already talked about this one. We already just seen these structures and the histology and the nerve cells. So, a nerve cell consists of a cell body, a number of branched structures, what are called dendrites, and one unbranched long structure, what is called axon. So, the dendrite of one nerve cell is normally connected to the axon of another nerve cell like this. This is what we have, a connection between the axon and the dendrite of another. So, to begin with, normally, we see that when the information from the external environment or the internal environment is received or acquired by the dendritic tip. Now this is what is called as the dendritic tip. So we can say this is the tip. So it is being normally just received at the end of the dendritic tip of a new nerve cell or neuron. So we have received the information at this point. And that one creates or sets off a chemical reaction. Some chemical reaction is going on that results in the production of or creation of what is called the electrical impulses. So the information is acquired either from the external environment or from the internal environment, and that one is being acquired at the end of the tip of the dendrite or dendron, and that one creates what is called a chemical reaction. That chemical reaction leads to the production of electrical impulse. So the generation of electrical impulse is nothing but a physico-chemical process. Something is going on inside the nerve cell. We'll be talking about later in higher classes. Nothing but actually the polarization and depolarization happens in the nerve cell, the nerve fiber, and that is responsible for the generation of electrical impulse. So the generation of the electrical impulse by depolarization process is called action potential. We can see the generation of electrical impulse is by means of action potential. We'll see about this one in higher classes about what is action potential, how is actually the electrical impulse being generated. Simply we can say at this juncture, that is once the information is received by the nerve cell at the dendritic tip, it just normally sets up certain actually chemical reactions which leads to the production of what is called an electrical impulse. You know that when the impulses are conducted only in the form of electrical impulse from the brain to the effector organ or from the receptor organ towards the brain or to the spinal cord. That is what is happening. So any impulse, actually any information in the case of nerve cell is being conducted in the form of electrical impulse. Now, once the electrical impulse is being created, now it is being passed on from this dendrite to the cytosol. This is the second stage. This impulse normally travels from the dendrite to the cell body. And from the cell body, it is being passed all along the axon to the end. To the end. Now, this is the end of the axon, for example. Suppose you are taking this is the end of the axon. We have some bulb-like structures. So the electrical impulses are conducted all along the axon to its end, where what will happen at the tip of the axon, we have some bulb-like structures. So these are all the bulb-like endings. So we'll show in the picture later. The bulb-like endings are called what is known as boat. The bulb-like endings are called as boat. And this button at the tip or at the end of axon has certain vesicles. These vesicles are filled with some kind of chemicals. And these chemicals are called neurotransmitters. Neurotransmitters. Now, what is the meaning for that one? So, normally, this is the point of connection between the axon and the dendrite of another neuron. Suppose this is axon, and let us assume this is the dendron. So there is no direct contact between the axon of one neuron and the dendrite of another neuron and the adjacent neuron. There is a gap between them. There is a gap. You see that when the electrical impulses which are being passed all along the axon cannot pass across this gap. They have no ability to pass across the gap between what we have the dendrite or dendron and the axon. So that these impulses should be converted into some other impulses which have the ability to pass across what is called the end plate, or we can say the boat. And that is why the electrical impulses are being converted into some chemical impulses. As soon as the electrical impulses are reaching the end of the axon, they set up actually what we call this one, the release of some chemicals. So you know that when any chemical substance has the ability to pass across a membrane, even in the case of cell membrane, you can see we have a number of food particles. The glucose or any other solutions can pass across the membrane easily. So, actually, here the chemicals have the ability of passing across just what is called the gap between the dendron of one neuron and the axon of another neuron. We'll see in the picture later. And such chemicals which are responsible for the transmission of impulses across the gap. I'm using the word gap. I'll use another word later for this gap. So that is a junction between the dendron and the axon between two different neurons. So now the chemicals have the ability of passing across or diffuse across the membrane of what is called, say, an example of axon, and diffuse into, that is, the dendrite of another neuron by means of a simple diffusion. So the impulses are actually being conducted in the form of chemical impulses at this point, at this junction. As these chemicals are responsible for the transmission of impulses in the form of what is called chemical impulses, just in the nervous system, they are called as neurotransmitters. We have a number of neurotransmitters in the nervous system. Say an example of acetylcholine. One neurotransmitter, what is called acetylcholine. So this is a neurotransmitter which transmits the impulses from one neuron to another neuron at the junction of the dendron and axon. So the junction is called the gap, or just the junction between one dendron of one neuron and the axon of another neuron is called synapse. Synapse. So the synapse is nothing but a junction between the dendron of one neuron and the axon of another neuron. Okay. So another neuron. So here, what will happen? There is no conduction of electrical impulses. The electrical impulses are being converted into chemicals, and these chemicals pass across the gap, namely what is called as a synapse, the junction. Hence the name neurotransmitters. We have a number of neurotransmitters in human body. One such neurotransmitter is acetylcholine. We also have another one, what is called dopamine or serotonin, or even, for example, sympathin or adrenaline. So these are all the different types of neurotransmitters which transmit the impulses across. what is called a synapse. So once again repeat. So the nerve impulses are generated only after the information has been acquired at the tip of what is called the dendron, where there is some sort of chemical reaction taking place. We can say what is called sodium potassium exchange form we'll have later, and that one creates electrical impulses. So generation of electrical impulse is a physical chemical process. Something is going on. The impulses are conducted in the form of what is called action potential by means of saltatory movement. See that when the impulse is not being conducted uniformly, just like a streaming movement, the impulses are being conducted in the form of jumping movement. That is why we can receive the information very quickly from the brain. So that type of movement is called saltatory movement. So by action potential, the impulses are conducted by means of saltatory movement. So you remember up to this level. Okay. So from this dendrite, the impulses are actually passed on to the cyton. From the cyton to the axon. At the tip of the axon, we have bulb-like end portion where we have some vesicles storing some chemicals called as neurotransmitters. On reaching that end, now the electrical impulses are converted into chemical impulses which diffuse across the membrane and enter into the adjacent neuron. Now, we'll see the third point. What is happening? So, I mentioned all of these chemicals cross the gap. Suppose I am drawing a larger one. This is one. What we call this one? Axon end. What I mentioned about the bulb-like end portion of the axon. Here we have the vesicles. So, these vesicles are filled with what are called the chemicals. Now, this is what is known as the dendron of adjacent neuron. Dendron of adjacent neuron. Now, this end is called presynaptic terminal. Now, this junction is called synapse. This junction is called synapse. So, synapse is nothing but a junction in the neuronal pathway between the adjacent neurons. Junction in the neuronal pathway between the adjacent neurons, that is called as a synapse. So, normally the synapse, there is a space. The two, namely the dendron and the axon of the adjacent neurons, are separated by means of a space. This space is called synaptic cleft. This space is called synaptic cleft. Synaptic cleft. Having a dimension of 10 to just 20 nanometer, just a gap between the two, the synaptic cleft, the synaptic gap is about 10 to 20 nanometer. Now, as soon as the electrical impulses are reaching here, what will happen? The vesicles burst, releasing the chemicals, namely the neurotransmitters. Now, the impulses are carried by these chemicals, which diffuse across the membrane and entering into the adjacent neuron dendrite, where once again the chemical impulses are being converted into similar electrical impulses and they are being conducted. So, throughout the entire nervous system, the impulses are conducted in the form of electrical impulses. Only at the junction, namely the synapse, they are being converted into chemicals. The electrical impulses are actually transformed into chemical impulses because only the chemicals have the ability of diffusing across the membrane. The electrical impulses cannot jump across this gap. That is why the neurotransmitters do the function of a transmission of the impulses across the synapse. So, this is what is happening. So, the impulses are generated, passed all along the axon, reaching the end of the axon, releasing the neurotransmitters. The neurotransmitters now carry the impulses in the form of chemical impulses, passed across the membrane, reaching the dendron. Now, this membrane actually is called presynaptic membrane, PRE, presynaptic, as it is found just before the synapse. This is also called presynaptic neuron terminal, and this is what is called post-synaptic membrane or post-synaptic terminal. So, this is also called post-synaptic neuron. This is called presynaptic neuron. The terminal is called presynaptic terminal. This is called post-synaptic terminal. This membrane is called presynaptic membrane, and this one is called post-synaptic membrane. So, a synapse is actually formed by the membranes of presynaptic neuron or terminal or the membrane, or the post-synaptic terminal or neuron or the membrane. This is what is happening. So, the impulses are being conducted all along this one. So, now the impulses are being conducted towards a particular organ, namely the muscle. Say an example, the muscle. So as soon as reaching the muscle once again, the electrical, suppose is a surface of the muscle, the neuron or the nerves form a junction with the muscle, and this is called what is known as neuromuscular junction. This is what is called synapse between the two neurons. The junction between the two neurons is called what is known as the synapse, whereas the junction between the nerve cell or the neuron and the muscle is called neuromuscular junction. So the once the electrical impulses are reaching the neuromuscular junction, once again the neurotransmitters are released, and they are normally conducting impulses at the neuromuscular junction, stimulating the muscle to undergo change, leading to what is called actually the muscle contraction. This is what is happening. This is the mechanism of what is happening during the formation and conduction of impulses. So once the information is acquired, it's normally created in the form of electrical impulses passed along the axon, actually reaching the end, liberating the chemicals and neurotransmitters which diffuse across membrane, reaching what is called the postsynaptic neuron. And from where the impulses are once again conducted to the organ concerned. Here nothing with the muscle. At the muscle actually surface, we have the nerve cells or the neuron or the nerve fiber forms a junction with the muscle, and that is called neuromuscular junction. Where once again the neurotransmitters are released, which stimulate the various chemical reactions in the muscle to happen that results in the contraction of the muscle. So this is what is happening normally during the formation and conduction of electrical impulses. So I repeat once again here. So there is a thing given. These chemicals cross the gap or synapse, then and start a similar electrical impulse in a dendrite of the next neuron. That is what is called postsynaptic neuron. Then a similar synapse, that is I mentioned already at the neuromuscular junction, finally allows the delivery of such impulses from the neurons to other organs. Here the organs may be a gland or a muscle to do the action. So normally those organs which are responding to the nervous system and do the action, they are called as simply effector organs. Any organ which does the action, either the gland or the muscle, is called as an effector organ. The one which receives the information is called as a receptor organ. The one which does the action is called what is known as the effector organ. It may be a gland or it may be a muscle. Now what is a synapse? A simple definition. So actually I mentioned already a nerve impulse is transmitted from one neuron to another through junctions. Simply we can say the junctions. These junctions are called synapses. So and the synapse I mentioned actually it is being formed by the membranes of a presynaptic neuron. The one which is normally formed just preceding the synapse, and the one which is actually following the synapse, the postsynaptic membrane, and both combine together to form a synapse, and between which there is a gap. That gap is called a synaptic cleft. So it is having a gap of nearly 10 to 20 nanometer. The gap between the adjacent neuron is about 10 to 20 nanometer. Now here is a clear picture. Suppose this is one neuron, what I mentioned, the presynaptic neuron. And this is what is called the pointer synapse. The one which is present just in front is called as a presynaptic neuron, or we can have the impulses which are being conducted in this direction. If the impulses are being conducted in this direction, this is what is called as a presynaptic neuron, and this is what is called as a postsynaptic neuron. So this is postsynaptic neuron. Here is a synapse, the point of contact. See that one, this is the axon, this is the dendron. So a synapse is actually formed between the axon of one neuron and the dendron of another neuron. Now it is being enlarged. Now this is the axon terminal, a bulb-like end portion. So what I mentioned is terminal as outer. So the bulb-like end portion of the terminal of the axon is called what is known as terminal. Now this is the direction of the impulse. So here we have the electric impulses. It is being conducted in the form of electrical impulses. We have out a positive charge and in a negative charge. Normally, if you analyze the nature of the membrane, in a polarized membrane, so we have outer positive charge and in a negative charge. If there is any change in the charge, either from outside or from inside, then it's called depolarized state. So anyway, the generation of the electrical impulses is by means of depolarization. So normal cell membrane has outer positive charge and a negative charge. Once a stimulus is given, at the point of stimulus, suppose for example, at this point we have outer positive and inner negative. So we are giving the stimulus at this point. Just say an example. One stimulus is given, what happened here? There is a change in charge. Now we have outer negative charge and inner positive charge. Now this is a normal membrane. In the normal membrane of a nerve cell or any other cell, we have outer positive charge and inner negative charge. In such cases, the membrane is called a polarized membrane. Once stimulus is given, you see that one there is a change in charge. Now we have outer negative, inner positive. This is called a depolarized state. This process is called the generation of the electrical impulse. So the generation of the electrical impulse by depolarization is called action potential. Suppose you are taking a nerve cell, the resting potential. The resting potential of the nerve cell before a stimulus is given is about minus 70 millivolt a current. This is the resting potential. Once a stimulus is given, just what will happen, this resting potential has been converted into an action potential of 45 millivolt. This is plus and this one is minus. So you'll be getting more and more information later in higher classes while coming up with this 11th or 12th standard. So anyway, impulse being created because of what is called depolarization. Change of charges outside and inside the membrane. So once the electrical impulse is being generated, now they are being conducted in this direction. You see the arrow mark. Now reaching the terminal and what I mentioned about. Here these are all the vesicles. So the vesicles are bursting and releasing the chemicals. Now these dots indicating the neurotransmitters. Now the impulses, the electrical impulses are handed over to these chemicals. Now these chemicals are diffused across the membrane, reaching what is called the next one, adjacent neuron, and that one is called postsynaptic membrane neuron or the postsynaptic neuron or simply the membrane. So a synapse is actually formed by this presynaptic membrane and the postsynaptic membrane, and there is a gap here. So anyway, the impulses are being conducted through this synaptic cleft having a gap of 10 to 20 nanometer. So this is the way normally the electrical impulses are conducted in a nerve cell. So this is only a short brief account only. You will be getting in detail how far the impulse is being generated because of one pumping mechanism, what we can say, sodium potassium exchange pump, etc. in future. So anyway, this is a simple mechanism, generation of electrical impulses and conversion of electrical impulses into chemical impulses and passing of these chemical impulses across the synaptic cleft at the junction of the synapse from one neuron to another. In such a way, you see that when many neurons are connected to form a long nerve fiber, so that the impulses could reach the muscle or the gland quickly. Now, the next one, neuromuscular junction, what I just explained already. See that one, this is the neuromuscular junction. So a synapse is formed normally between the axon of one neuron and the dendron of another neuron. And now at the end, you see that one, the axon of a nerve fiber or the neuron, it forms what is called a junction with the muscle at its surface. And this is what is known as the neuromuscular junction. The junction between the nerve fiber ending and the muscle surface is called what is known as neuromuscular junction. Now here also a synapse is formed, but we are not using the word synapse because it is the one which is being formed between the presynaptic membrane and the postsynaptic membrane. Now the postsynaptic membrane here is nothing but the membrane of the muscle. In the synapse, the postsynaptic membrane is formed by the dendron actually of the adjacent neuron. But here the postsynaptic membrane is normally formed at the neuromuscular junction by the membrane of the muscle cell. So in such a manner, normally the impulses are being conducted from the nerve cell to the muscle so that the muscle does the action. So here the muscle is called as an effector organ. As it performs the function, it is called as an effector organ. So anyway, the impulses are being conducted in two different places. One at the synapse and also at the end of what is called just a neuron and a muscle, or we can say between the nerve cell and an organ. The organ may be a muscle cell or a muscle or a gland. Now the next one. reflex action. So you are listening to the lesson. It is called as a voluntary process. You are listening to the video. It is a voluntary process because it is under the control of your will or our will, we can say, under the control of the brain. So once you decide to see anything or to do any action, then you are doing it under the control of your will. And such action is called as a voluntary act. Say an example of walking, running, etc. to begin with, or just writing, or seeing a picture. So, or doing any activity manually. All these things are an example for voluntary activity. But some actions are being carried out without your consciousness, without your thought, without the function of the brain, without the influence of the brain, without what is called actually the control of the brain. And such activities which are taking place involuntarily, without your knowledge. For example, when you're sleeping, some ants are coming and biting you, or the mosquitoes are biting you. You are just scratching by using your fingers without waking up. So it is an involuntary process. Or while touching a hot object, you are jerking away the hand, involuntary. Or when some objects are approaching your eyes, you are closing your eyelids without your knowledge. So all such actions are being carried out without your consciousness or without your thought. So these stimuli are simply called as peripheral stimuli. So peripheral stimuli means coming from outside, all or nothing but the sensory stimuli, stimulating the sensory nerve cells, or for example the skin. For example, while touching a hot object. That hot object is a stimulus, also called as peripheral stimulation. It stimulates your peripheral nervous system, namely the spinal nerves and cranial nerves, and carrying the impulses towards the spinal cord or the brain. So, any peripheral stimulation which occurs involuntarily, that is without your consciousness or without your just what is called thought, and normally requires the involvement of the central nervous system. Partial involvement, not the total, not total involvement, partial involvement, because mainly the spinal cord is involved. So, and it requires the involvement, a part of the central nervous system or the partial involvement of the central nervous system. That is one part. Maybe in the central nervous system we have the brain and the spinal cord. Only spinal cord alone taking part mainly in reflex activities. That is why we are saying that one a part of the central nervous system. So any peripheral stimulation which occurs involuntarily and also requires actually a part of that is requires the involvement of the part of the central nervous system is called as a reflex action. Just a quick closure of the eyelids when some object approaching your eyes, jerking away the hand while touching a hot object, or some ants are coming and biting you or scratching it without waking up while sleeping, or while just pricking of just for example a pin or nail or anything else. So you are just or thorn, you are just taking away the leg from that stimulus. So all these activities are taking place involuntarily, without your consciousness, without your will, and not under the control of the brain. And all such activities are called reflex action. That's why we use the word a peripheral stimulation, which occurs involuntarily and also requires the involvement that is a part of the central nervous system, here the spinal cord. So all involuntary activity which occurs spontaneous. I'm using the word spontaneous movement. That means any activity which takes place naturally is called as a spontaneous activity. So involuntary spontaneous activity because of the stimulation of the nervous system. So because of the peripheral stimulation, that is the impulses or the stimuli coming from that is external environment, stimulating the peripheral nervous system. Here nothing but the nerves carrying the impulses towards the brain or spinal cord do the action without any consciousness. Then, and for carrying out the reflex action, we need some structure, a basic structure. The basic structure actually we can see a nerve chain. So while touching a hot object that is being received by the receptor organ, named the skin is an example for receptor, a sensory organ or a receptor organ. Or for example, eye is an example for receptor organ because it receives the light stimulus. Ear is an example for receptor organ because it receives what is called the sound stimulus. And similarly, the tongue receives the what is called as a chemical stimulus and also the nose. Like that we have anything which is being received from the external environment is called as a stimulus, That stimulus is received by the receptor or sensory organ. And for that only we are showing or just exhibiting a kind of reaction. That reaction shown by us is called as a response. And stimulus and response together form what is called the irritability. So any living body has one of the characteristics, namely irritability. That is because of the nervous system. So for carrying out the reflex activity, we need certain structures. And such anatomical basis responsible for carrying out the reflex action is called as what is known as the reflex organ. It is an anatomical basis responsible for carrying out the reflex action, and that is what is called reflex organ. We can say simply it's a nerve chain between the receptor organ and also the effector organ by passing through. So in between we have a mediator, a controlling manager, what we call this one, the nervous system. So the nerve chain between the receptor organ and the effector organ, which does the action of reflex action, is called the reflex organ. It is an anatomical basis for reflex action. Now, what are the components? There are 5 basic components responsible for carrying out the reflex action. So anyway, the reflex arc is being formed of 5 components. Now, what are the components? So these are all the 5 basic components. 1. Sensory or receptor arc. The one which receives the stimulus from the external environment. For example, prick, heart stimulus, anything. Once it is being received, it is to be conducted towards the central nervous system, namely the spinal cord. And that is being carried out by a neuron or a nerve. So any neuron which carries information from a receptor to the central nervous system is called as a sensory or afferent neuron. Any neuron which carries the sensory stimulus in the form of impulses from the receptor towards the central nervous system is called as what is known as sensory or afferent neuron, moving towards, entering in. And now we have in the spinal cord. The processing of the information occurs mainly in the spinal cord. If you are going through the structure of the spinal cord, it is being formed of 2 components. A central component, suppose I am drawing a simple diagram, we'll have later a specific diagram also. This is the spinal cord. And now in a cross section, it shows 2 parts. The outer part is called as a white mat. The central part, which is gray in color, is called gray mat. This is because of the 2 different types of nerve cells. So white matter and gray matter. The processing of the information occurs mainly in the gray matter of the spinal cord. So that is a 3rd component. Simply we can say the spinal cord. So receptor number 1, and then sensory, which carries information towards what is called the gray matter, where the processing of the information is going on or being carried out. And then from there, the action just actually the information is taken away by another neuron, what is called efferent or motor neuron. So it is the leaving one. Anything which is entering is called as afferent. Anything which is leaving is called as efferent. So anything which is being anything which is responsible for carrying out a motor activity. Here the motor activity is nothing but the muscle activity. If you have any word related to motor, that is always referring to the muscle activity. So efferent one is the one which carries information from the spinal cord towards the effector cord. Now in between which I mentioned another neuron, interneuron or relay neuron or association neuron. So the information between the sensory and efferent, the sensory or motor neuron, being conveyed or being relayed by means of a messenger, a mediator, is normally found in the gray matter, and that is called interneuron, connector of the sensory and motor, or connector of the efferent or efferent neuron, present in the gray matter of the spinal cord, as it relays the information or it associates the 2 neurons. It is called relay neuron or association neuron. As it is found between the sensory and motor neuron, it's called interneuron. Now, the efferent neuron carries the information towards an organ. It may be a muscle or a gland. The one which does the action, that is called effector organ. So these are all the 5 components responsible for carrying out the reflex action together from the anatomical basis, what we call this one the reflex arm. So this is the root of the reflex action and the root of the reflex arm. Action or arm, we can say either way. Now this is the part. See that one, this is the receptor arm, the skin, which receives the stimulus. The stimulus may be a pain or pressure or hot, anything, any sensory stimulus what you are receiving from external source. Let us assume here nothing but the hotness while touching a hot pan. So that stimulus, this is number one, a receptor. So it is being carried towards the central nervous system by the afferent neuron. Now this is the gray matter of the spinal cord. That is a third component, gray matter of the spinal cord. And now this is the fifth component, and this is the fourth component, namely just what we call this one, the motor. And here there is a neuron, a connector between the motor and sensory, that is what is called the interneuron. And this is a motor neuron or effector neuron or efferent neuron. That one carries information towards a muscle, and the one which does the action is called the effector. So you are jerking away that hand. And that is the phenomenon, that is nothing but the response or what is called the action that is being carried out by the muscle. The activation or just actually the response of the hand and the one which is being brought about by the muscle, so that you are jerking away the hand from that hot object. So I will show another picture, a clear picture, what is happening, what are the different steps. See that one. So this is step one, arrival of stimulus. Here the arrival of stimulus is nothing but just you are pricked by a pin. This is the arrival of the stimulus. So that what will happen, immediately the receptor, here the skin receptor, responsible for touch or pain, and that is being stimulated. Once it is being stimulated, what will happen, the next step is the activation of the sensory neuron, so that it can carry the information towards what is called the gray matter of the spinal cord, where you have the information is normally processed. It is being processed in the central nervous system. And also, not only is being processed, that information is also carried to the brain also by means of another axon, what is called the collateral axon. That is simply, it is being carried away to the brain also. But mainly it is being carried out by the spinal cord. Almost all reflex activities are being carried out by the spinal cord. It is generated in the it is generated only in the spinal cord only, maximum in most cases. If it is actually under the control of the brain, then it is called cerebral reflex. But most of the reflex activities are under the control of the spinal cord only. We can say it is nothing but a spinal reflex. So here some information is being processed. So we can say simply the information is being processed in the gray matter. Once it is being processed, the information is conveyed from the sensory neuron to the motor neuron through a junction neuron, that is called interneuron or relay neuron or association neuron, because it is relaying the information from the sensory to motor. Now the next step, the activation of this motor now. This is step number 4. Activation of, that is what is called motor neuron. Now it carries the information to the muscle. Now the muscle is being activated. So the effector organ is activated. So the response by the effector. Here the response is nothing but you see that one taking away the hand from what is called that stimulus, the pain stimulus caused by what is called a pain. So anything else, if it is a heart stimulus or pain stimulus, anything else. So this is what we have just during the process of reflex action. So one, arrival of the stimulus, activation of the receptor, activation of the sensory neuron, processing of information in the gray matter of the spinal cord, activation of the motor neuron, then activation of the effector organ. So a response is shown by the effector, that is nothing but taking away the hand. That is a response, the reaction shown by that one. So these are all the various events normally happening, reflex activities. So normally, all reflex activities, what I mentioned earlier, started while in the spinal cord. See that one? The reflex arcs or the reflex activities, anything we can see. So mainly the reflex arcs are formed in the spinal cord itself. See that? Most of the reflex arcs, most of the reflex activities are under the control of the spinal cord. So all the information normally, the input what we are receiving in the form of information also conveyed to the brain. What is in the collateral neuron also carries information to the brain also. But the effect is made only by the spinal cord. While sleeping, you know that when the brain is taking rest. So that if an insect is coming and biting you, just actually the brain is not looking after. It is a spinal cord which looks after that activity. That is why almost all the reflex arcs are formed only in the spinal cord, though the information is being transmitted to the brain through just the collateral neurons. What is the reason why we have developed such reflex arcs mainly in the spinal cord? Here is an answer. So reflex arcs have evolved, normally they have evolved mainly in animals because the thinking process of the brain is not faster. It cannot work instantly, immediately for a stimulus. So the reaction or the response is not shown immediately, effectively by the brain. It takes some time. That is why the action is normally carried out by the spinal cord. What is the reason why we have the reflex arcs mainly developed in the spinal cord? Because the thinking process of the brain, you see that one, is not fast enough. So we have evolved these reflex arcs, an efficient way of functioning in the absence of true thought process. Here the true thought process is nothing but the thinking by the brain. So in order to just make the actions very effectively, even in the absence of true thought process, nothing but in the absence of cerebrum or in the absence of brain, the reflex activities are. So almost all the reflex activities are developed in order to just increase the efficiency of an organism to respond to a particular action very quickly and effectively. That's why we have the reflex activities developed because of the slow thought process, slow thinking process of the brain. And in order to make any activity more efficiently, the reflex activities or reflex arms are evolved mainly in the spinal cord. So that is about the reflex action, something you have to know what are the components involved in reflex action. So it is a spontaneous process. So you know the meaning of a spontaneous process, any process that is taking place naturally without any stimulation. So stimulation that is happening, you are just actually touching a hot object instantly without your knowledge. So anything which is going on, any activity that is going on in the process, in the body, just without any intervention of a man or artificial method, that is called a spontaneous process. So all reflex activities are spontaneous activities, involuntary activities taking place naturally. Now, let's pass on to the various components of the human nervous system. So here is a flow chart showing what are the different components of the neural system or the nervous system. So we can broadly divide the entire nervous system into two components. One, a central nervous system, the one which is found in the mid-central axis of the body. That is the central nervous system. So the central nervous system, as it is found in the mid-central axis of the body, having two components. One is the brain, another one spinal cord. That's why it's called as what is called the central nervous system, CNS. And from this brain as well as the spinal cord, many nerves are arising, moving towards the peripheral organs. And those nerves arising from the brain and this what is called the spinal cord to carry out the actions, to carry the information from the receptor towards the central nervous system and also from the central nervous system to the effector organ. And as they are moving towards the peripheral regions of the body to do the activities, and they are called together as the peripheral nervous system. So those nerves controlling the activities, transmitting the information to and from the central nervous system together constitute the peripheral nervous system. As a general rule, the peripheral nervous system includes somatic neural system and then autonomic nervous system. Autonomic nervous system or autonomic neural system. Now, this autonomic neural system is an independent system. Though it is a part of the nervous system, it is working independent, but making use of the rules of the central nervous system. So there is no separate branches of nerves for this one. They are making use of mainly the rules of the cranial and spinal nerves for their transmission. So they are working independently. That is why it's called autonomic neural system. Now, the somatic neural system includes mainly those nerves arising from the brain as well as from the spinal cord. So an example of actually from the brain we have nerves arising, they are called as a cranial nerves. There are 12 paths of cranial nerves. So And also from the spinal cord, there are 31 pairs of nerves arise. So both the spinal nerves from the spinal cord and the cranial nerves from the brain together constitute the somatic nervous system. Cranial nerves of 12 pairs, spinal nerves of 31 pairs. We'll go back later once again. Now, the autonomic nervous system and independent nervous system, it has two systems or two divisions which are working antagonistically in an opposite manner. For example, one increases the secretion of saliva secretion, another one decreases the saliva secretion. So one accelerates the blood pressure or heartbeat rate, another one decreases the rate of heartbeat. This is what is known as antagonistic activity. Even if you are taking the muscles, you see that one biceps and triceps. These two muscles are working in an opposite manner, antagonistic muscles. One for flexing the arms, another one the distancing of arms. So these are all actually pair of organs. They are doing the activities in opposite manner. That is called antagonistic activity. So here are the two systems of autonomic nervous system, and these two systems are working antagonistically, that is in opposite manner, to just maintain the balance of the body. And they are one sympathetic nervous system, another one parasympathetic nervous system. So they will go in detail later. So these are all the various components of the neural system: central, peripheral, somatic, autonomous. Then cranial nerves, spinal nerves. Then we have sympathetic and then parasympathetic neural systems. Now human brain. Something about, not so deep, a few structures related to as per your level. Now, you know that what? We have the nervous system concerned with the coordination of various activities. But for coordination, we need a center, a commanding center. The commanding center is nothing but the brain. So it is the main coordinating center in the body. You know that one, it is the one which receives information from various parts of the body, as well as from the external environment, and integrate all these activities so that we can just perform the life very active manner. Any activity being performed just in a synchronized manner because of the commander, namely the brain. That is why actually we call this what it acts as a command and control system. It's a commander, a manager, a director. So it receives information from various parts of the body and integrate all these activities so that every activity has been worked out in a synchronized manner. Now what are the parts of the brain? And before that, a general rule. So you know that one, what are the different functions performed? Normally the brain controls many voluntary movements, particularly the skeletal muscular activities, you know, the balance of the body. Even some other functions, for example, the functioning of the vital organs, namely the heart, lungs also, under the control of the brain. And also your behavior, human behavior, what is called ethology. The study of behavior is called ethology. So, anyway, the brain is the one responsible for controlling the voluntary movements, maintaining your balance, and also the important controlling the functions of the important organs like lungs, heart, etc. Your behavior. In addition to that one, it is a site for processing your vision. It's been processed there. The hearing, even the speech. You can speak. There is an area for controlling your speech. And also your memory, intelligence, then the emotions. You have different kinds of emotions. For example, fear, anger, and also rage. And also you have the pleasure and then communications. All are being controlled by this one. So your memory, intelligence, emotions, and also your thoughts all being located mainly in the brain. That's why it's called as a command and controlling system. Now, what are the components of human brain? As a general rule, we can divide the brain into three components: forebrain, midbrain, hindbrain. Technically, the forebrain is called prosencephalon. Then we have the midbrain, the mesencephalon. The hindbrain, what is called, that is rhombencephalon. It's being once again divided into metencephalon and myelencephalon like this. Generally, prosen, meson, and then rhombencephalon. The word cephalon refers to head. So, what are the components of the forebrain? Which includes mainly the major part cerebrum, the largest part. All other parts are hidden below. You cannot see all other parts because of the enormously grown cerebrum. Due to erect posture, so normally in the case of, for example, the animals which are crawling on land, The body is parallel to the substratum. You can see all the structures in a linear fashion, forebrain, midbrain, and if you just open the head of a frog, you can see all the structures clearly in a linear fashion from top to bottom. But in the case of human being, you cannot see all the components, you can see mainly only the cerebrum. All of the components are hidden below because of the enormously grown cerebrum and also the torsion of the brain. And also actually due to the erect posture, all modifications have taken place even during the course of the evolution of man. The main change that occurred in relation to the increased size of the brain. So anyway, the cerebrum, then we have two components together, diencephalon, thalamus and hypothalamus together called as diencephalon. Diencephalon. This is together, thalamus and hypothalamus. Now the midbrain is being formed of four lobes, hence the name corpora quadrigemina, another term used for midbrain. Then hindbrain, we have three components, pons, then we have cerebellum, and the important center, namely, that is the medulla oblongata, the one which controls the vital activities, for example, your breathing movements, your heart movements, the circulatory movements, all being controlled by this medulla oblongata. So we'll see one by one, particularly not about the structural aspects, mainly related to the functional aspects. Now here is the diagram showing just normally the vertical section, or we can say normally it's called sagittal section. If you make a section of the brain in this direction, then it's called sagittal section, because we can also make the brain section in this manner, that is called vertical. We are making the section in this direction, then it's called sagittal section. So the brain sagittal section shows the different components. Now I'll take first one, the forebrain. I'll take the notes, I'll come back to this diagram. Now the forebrain. So I mentioned already it consists of three major components, one cerebrum, thalamus and hypothalamus. Let us take the cerebrum. I mentioned already it forms a major part of the brain. About 2/3 of the brain is formed up, you know that one cerebrum already. See, if you are taking the cerebrum, there is a little difference in the size and weight of the brain between the two sexes. If you are taking the male, the cerebrum is weighing about nearly 1,400 grams. And in the case of female, it is about 1,200 grams. A slight difference with reference to the weight. So totally, if you are taking the volume of the brain, 1,500 square centimeter, sorry, cubic centimeter, 1,500 cubic centimeter, that's the volume of the brain. The weight is about 1.5 kg. So its weight is equivalent to the weight of, more or less equivalent to the weight of what is called the liver. That is the liver weight and the brain weight more or less equal. That is, you can say 1.5 kg. So in the case of female, it is about only 1,200 grams, and in the case of male, it is about 1,400 grams, generally speaking. So it forms a major part of the human brain and is formed of two different lobes. They're all joined together just by means of a tract of nerve fibers or a sheet of nerve fibers. So we have two equal halves called the cerebral hemispheres. The two hemispheres are joined by means of a tract of nerve fibers or a sheet of nerve fibers, what is called corpus callosum. So the coordination between the right and left cerebral hemispheres is possible only because of the corpus callosum. If corpus callosum being removed, there is no integration between the two hemispheres. So there is no coordination between the two parts of the body, right half and left half. Then, if you are taking actually the brain, you have an outer part as well as inner part. The outer part is called cerebral cortex. The inner part is called cerebral medulla. So the outer cerebral cortex is normally formed of a grey colored material, formed up mainly what is called non-medullated neurons, and that one is called as a gray matter. So you have, just for example, if you take the brain, the outer cerebral region is called as a cortex. It's being formed of gray matter. The inner region is called medulla, formed of white matter. So the gray matter in the outer surface of the cerebrum is a cerebral cortex. The gray matter is because of the presence of one type of neuron, namely non-medullated neurons. We have some sheep. We'll see, I already mentioned about this one under the histology. What I mean by a non-medullated neuron and a medullated neuron. So in the case of non-medullated neuron, there is no medullary sheath or myelin sheath. In the case of medullated neurons, we have a myelin sheath or a medullary sheath. A fatty layer is present, a fatty sheath. That is why it is normally white in color. So, outer surface of the cerebrum is gray in color because of the possession of what is called non-medullated neurons. Now, if you analyze the nature of the functional areas of the cerebrum, if you take each cerebral hemisphere, apparently it is being divided, not complete, apparently it is being divided into 4 lobes. We have the frontal lobe, then we have what is called the temporal lobe laterally, then the superficial one, what is called the parietal lobe, and at the back we have the occipital lobe. So we have 4 lobes apparently. And each lobe is responsible for specific function: frontal, parietal, temporal, and occipitals. Now, the outer cerebral cortex contains a number of areas. They are called as the functional areas. We have, for example, mainly sensory areas, motor areas, and association areas. And normally the association areas considered as neither sensory nor motor, but normally they are found in association with either with the sensory areas or with the motor areas. So the association areas normally they are responsible for intersensory functions, integrating functions, intersensory functions, intersensory associations, actually responsible for integrating the different sensory functions. And normally these are considered as the area of recognition. If any brain activity is being carried out, and that activity gets an approval from these association areas. For sensory area, we have an association area. For motor area, we have an association area. So these are all the areas concerned with the recognition of any activity that is to be carried out. Before it is being carried out, it is being actually recognized whether it is being carried out or not by these what is called association areas. So we have areas adjacent to either sensory or motor areas. They are called as association areas. So we have 3 areas generally speaking: sensory, motor, and then association areas. Normally these areas are concerned either the sensory or motor areas. You know that one, as I already mentioned, for hearing, for smell, for speech, for vision, even for doing the voluntary activities of skeletal muscles, all being carried out mainly either sensory or motor areas. Whereas the association areas normally they are responsible for intersensory associations, integrating the different activities perceived by the sensory areas. Like for example, also they are concerned with the memory and communications. They act as a relay center. So the information received by the brain being integrated, and they are normally just found in association with either sensory areas or motor areas. For each area, for example, visual area, there is an association area, visual association area. Suppose we are perceiving any information through the eye, that is being first carried to the association area where it is being interpreted, then only it is being passed on to the main sensory area, namely the visual area, where the information is normally sent out to do any activity. So they are concerned with the function of recognition. They only approve, then only that is being carried out by the main center. So anyway, we have the main centers like sensory and motor areas, and the helping centers, namely the association areas, simply called as intersensory associations. They are concerned with intersensory associations. Now thalamus. So the first part, cerebrum, the major part, almost all activities, you'll see the picture later, are concerned with this one. So now the thalamus, it is also actually a part of the diencephalon. So the thalamus and the hypothalamus together call as diencephalon. Now thalamus is the largest part of the diencephalon. It is made up of mainly nuclei. If you have any bone in the brain or in the spinal cord, like nuclei, this nuclei refer to not the nucleus of the cell, but the gray matter, the collection of what is called cell bodies. Here and there in the central nervous system, both brain and spinal cord, we have collection of the cytons and cell bodies, and they look like what is called gray bodies. And such collection of cell bodies or gray matter together called as nuclei. They are not the nuclei of the cells, but the gray matter. So in the thalamus, it is nothing but a collection of nuclei. That means it is being formed of mainly gray matter. So it is a main coordinating center for integrating various sensory inputs received by the body. That's why I mentioned it is a major coordinating center for sensory and motor signaling. So here only the information is passed on through this thalamus and reaching the concerned part of the cell. And also your mood, some more. For example, some activities, some movements of the body related to the emotions. For example, when a person is frightened, during fear, during anger, there is a tremor in the body. And all these activities, the emotions, the movements due to emotions, are also controlled by this thalamus. Now, hypothalamus. The lower part of what is called thalamus is called hypothalamus. So you have to remember this part because most of certain activities are involuntarily controlled by this one. For example, the temperature regulation, the temperature center, the regulatory center is located more in the hypothalamus. So it contains a number of centers. Those centers related to, for example, controlling temperature. Body temperature is regulated. And you were just appetite, what is called hunger. Then satiety center. So the hunger or the appetite will make you to eat. It is also another center which just make you to stop eating. That is called satiety center. So once you are feeling full, it makes you to stop eating. And that center is called satiety center, opposite to the appetite center. So hunger, feeling full, and also your thirst. It makes you to drink. And also your sexual behavior. It is being controlled by the hypothalamus. So center for thirst, center for hungry, center for actually what is called body temperature regulation, your sexual behavior, and also your emotions. So you are having certain emotions, and the emotions being expressed because of the controlling center by the hypothalamus. So it shows or expresses the emotional reactions. What? The excitement, your anger, your fear, the pleasure and motivation. So all these activities, that is, we can say your mood relationship is normally related to this hypothalamus. So your sexual behavior, and also there is actually what is called the expressions, emotions like anger, even for example rage, and also feeling actually just feeling some kind of what is called satisfied. So we have, for example, after that, expressing your emotions, or even after eating, you are just actually having the feeling that you have completed one work. So feeling full, that is after meal, also under the control of this hypothalamus. Then in addition to that one, it is a center which controls the activity of the pituitary gland. How? By secreting certain secretions. These secretions are called as the hormones or the releasing factors. So through releasing factors or hormones, the hypothalamus controls the activities of anterior pituitary gland, and such hormones are called hypothalamic hormones. So these are some of the functions related to the forebrain. We'll pass on to the midbrain and hindbrain in the next class, as one of time, just and concluding. So you may ask any question or post it, then we'll answer it. Thank you. Class is complete.